Hey, good morning, everybody. Tyler Hankins, TH Property Group, Keller Williams, sitting here at the Misfit Barbershop off 135 in Greenwood. We're here for another weekly cleanup. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Oh, enjoying this weather this week. It's going to feel like spring. So if you tuned into the last one, you know that we're going more educational with these. And today we're going to talk about first right contingencies. So this is a super common method that we can use if you need to sell a house, but you would like to find the house that you're going to move to first. All right. So generally speaking, when you already own a property, we've got a couple different avenues. Assuming that the lender tells you that you need to sell your house in order to buy a house. You've filled out your application, the lender has ran all the numbers, and they've determined that 2 mortgage payments is probably going to stretch you a little thin, right? So for their safety, for their investment in you, they want you to sell your current property in order to buy your new. So if you do that, you got a couple of different routes that you can go. You can list first, and then start the clock once you accept an offer on your current property. That you have that long to find you something new, right? There's some pros to that. There's definitely some pros to that. The main one being you have an offer in hand. You have an idea what you're going to make. And when we make an offer on your new property, you can tell them, hey, we've got an offer in hand. We've already been through this many steps. We're going to close on this date. And that seller can feel quite a bit more comfortable taking your offer because there's fewer unknowns with it. A first right is the other option on that, where you do it the other direction. You find the house that you want to buy first, and you make that contingent upon your house selling. So a couple of important things to keep in mind with a first right. So with a first right contingency, that property is still going to show up as active on the BLC, on Zillow, on Realtor, whatever. Some of them will show, in the small letters underneath the word active, first right of contingency. Some will not. So that is something to keep in mind with the first right, is that status will change, but it won't go all the way to pending until you remove that contingency. So what that means is that allows the seller to still market the home. They can still show the home. They can even still take other offers on the home. All right, so with a first right contingency, that door is still cracked. There is still an avenue in which somebody else comes in, and we lose our opportunity to get that house as long as that contingency is on. So a lot of times, if we do go the first route or the first right route, we try to be a little competitive on both fronts, right? So you kind of got to compensate a little bit to the seller a lot of times to get them to take the first right, because it is an uncertain avenue. There's a whole other house that has to sell, and it has not even been on the market yet. So, that matters. And also, when we're pricing on the same token, you're going to have so many days. So in the first right, we are going to give ourselves, you're going to set a deadline. Generally speaking, in my experience, I usually try to keep that even a little short, because the seller doesn't want to wait a month for you to try to sell your house. So a lot of times that's 2 weeks, maybe 3. I've done them as short as 7 days, and that means that clock is starting immediately. And we've really got to get a move on in getting it sold. I'd say in the current climate, we try to give ourselves somewhere between the 10 to 14 day range for a first right, and just hope that the sellers are on board with that. Now, I should preface all of this, I should have prefaced it at the beginning. Licensed in the state of Indiana, right? So this is all Indiana talk. First rights aren't, only Indiana thing, but if you have state-specific questions, just message me, and I'll be sure, if I can't answer it, to get you linked up with somebody in your area that can help. But so back to first rights. So that's one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to set that deadline. And how much time we have is going to dictate kind of how we need to price and how we need to market, your current property. if you got 10 days to sell, and we got to rush through pictures and all that sort of stuff, we've got to price it as if we need it to sell within 10 days, right? So those are all things to kind of keep in mind when you're trying to make a decision on which avenue you want to go. That is one of the pros to listing first, selling it, and then trying to find your house after, is you get to be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more how if you go with a higher price, you can come down. Like, you got more time, I guess is what I mean. You can be more patient in looking for the right offer. That was the words I was trying to find. So with a first right, that is a little bit tricky. Now, I generally set up my first rights to where if the seller were to take another offer, that offer cannot also have a first right. All right, so they can't ditch your first right offer for another first right offer. That's usually how I set mine up. Not everybody does it that way, but that's usually how I do it. Because if they're gonna make us jump through the hoops to either get the contingency removed, or they're just gonna straight, or we're gonna lose the deal to another, it feels like they shouldn't be able to take another first right. It should be because there is no contingency, right? So generally speaking, when somebody does that, when a seller says, hey, we took another offer, there's a clock that starts, because that's what first right actually means. You have the first right because you were the first offer. So there's another deadline, there's another time frame in that first right that says, if they accept an offer, you get 48 hours to remove your contingency, 72 hours, or whatever the case may be. It's usually only a couple days. It's not usually a long time, but you do have a couple of days to try to figure something out. That's when you're going back to the lender. Hey, is there any way to do this without selling my house? Or, maybe we had an offer on your house, but you were hoping for something bigger, but now you have to make a call. Or it expires, and the sellers are then free to go to the other offer, and we're just back on the horse looking for another house again. So the first right it's something that has some intricacies to it, but it's not super complicated. All right. So in the simplest of terms, a first right contingency is when you have a property to sell, but you have not sold it yet. So the seller accepted your offer knowing that you needed to sell another house and that you do not currently have an offer on it. So you have a very specific timeline to get that house sold. It's just to go pending, does not have to be closed. So that is just for you to accept an offer. So for your property to go pending, and then we can remove that contingency, remove that first right contingency, and you will officially go pending on the other property, the property that you were trying to buy. So not something that's super daunting, but it is a little confusing, especially if you haven't been through it a couple of times. We do them all the time. Super common. I don't know a realtor who hasn't done a first right, at least at one point or another, on one side of the aisle or the other, right? We see them all the time. So it's not rocket science. It's not something that can't be done. It is a little more, it's a little more of a balancing act. But that's why you should always use a real estate professional. We've done them multiple times. We understand how we need to coordinate and keep things in the, within the lines a little bit, and get us from A to B the way that we want to. Right, and get everything closing at the same time. So those first rights are a real tool, especially if you need to sell your property. With inventory being as low as it is and has been, first rights are super common and a little more appealing than listing first and trying to find something, because it's not always the easiest thing to do to find something. So this allows you to find that next step first, and then get your place sold. Now, another pro with that is, with inventory being as low as it has been, it's usually not the most impossible thing for us to do to get your current home sold in the amount of time that we have to get it sold. So keep that in mind as you're, if you're thinking about an upgrade or thinking about getting into something a little bit different. If you do have a house currently, you have options on how to trade in that property for the next. And a first right is one that we use it all the time, and allows you the flexibility to not feel like you're rushing into your next place, that you just have to buy a house because you need a house, we need a roof. Allows you the opportunity to be selective, and your next purchase does somewhat compromise your bargaining power when it comes time to sell. But we haven't seen prices really change much, and a lot of reports and posts and things from a lot of my realtor friends. We're seeing some multiple offer stuff come back around. So I think I would be more concerned with finding the house that you want to buy than I would be, setting yourself up for a lower purchase price. I think you'll still be happy with what you can get on the sell side, and you can make sure you're happy with the buy side. So if you have any other questions, anything more specific on first rights, I'd love to answer your questions. My number is 317-364-8913. Again, if you're not in Indiana and you have a question that's specific to the state that you're in, just let me know. I'd be happy to get you linked up with somebody if I don't already have the answer. But hopefully this was helpful. I know first rights is something that, especially with both buyers and sellers, we need to go over the intricacies of them quite often. So thought this might be helpful. I hope everybody has a great week, and we will see you next week. Very much appreciate it. Again, we're at the Misfit Barbershop off 135. My man Jason always does a great job getting us cleaned up. My name's Tyler Hankins with TH Property Group and Keller Williams, and we will talk to you soon. Adios.